the book's available in Australia because I know because we've sold a hell of a lot of them there in Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah, I'll find the book. That's not an issue at all. Yeah, I'm going to get myself a copy of that. Sounds fascinating.
Understand why that is.
What do you mean?
Well, when you look at the proportions of sales around the world,
Yeah.
Australia and New Zealand, for some obscure reason, I suppose because we did work out there a lot, but proportionally speaking, it's sold incredibly well in New Zealand and Australia.
Australia and New Zealand just loved Dire Straits. I remember, I think it was my 18th birthday, and Sultans of Swing had just come out, and we didn't play any other record that whole night. Maybe it was my 21st, actually. It was my 21st. It was on, it must have played, 150 times round and round and round and round. And we just kept dancing. I mean, we were all a bit, affected by different things, of course. We didn't even notice that it had gone on that long, but was great.
What kind of different things are you talking about here?
Probably just smoking dope at that time, really, and alcohol, as you do.
Yeah, some people still do.
Yeah, I don't know how those ones keep healthy though. I've had to.
Yeah.
Well, a bit of alcohol's okay, but I certainly couldn't keep smoking like I used to.
No. I think we had. Well, we all sort of gave it up at one point. Are you still smoking?
No, I haven't smoked. I can't. Now, if I take a drag of something, it gets stuck in the throat. It makes me wonder how I ever managed to do it. But I've got girlfriends who still do smoke, and I just can't understand it.
Yeah, well, I've got 2 children that smoke like chimneys, so that's quite difficult.
Yeah, my kids gave up. So are they smoking weed or cigarettes?
Well, they smoke cigarettes, but I think they do occasionally indulge in something else. I mean, Harry, my eldest son, he's 25. He just got back from Glastonbury, so it took him 4 days to recover.
Yeah, he's a festival goer. Yeah, my daughter, the youngest, is 28, so she's probably stopped smoking for a couple of years now, maximum. And she's she's just landing now somewhere near Portugal for some festival coming up to. So, Millie, you're a bit old for festivals. She doesn't think so.
Well, apparently the average age for people going to Glastonbury is 36 or 37.
Oh, is that right? Oh, okay.
So it's not exactly it's not a young person's festival, and also it's incredibly expensive now.
Yeah.
I mean, you end up spending something like, I think it's about £300 or £400 a ticket.
That's insane.
We're walking around often in the mud with about 250,000 other people.
Yeah, but I mean, you would have done it at that age. Of course, you would have.
It wasn't around actually then. There weren't any.
We didn't have festivals. No.
In fact, actually, we.
Oh, I love it.
I don't know. Hello.
It's John.
Oh, hello. Can I call you back? Would you mind? I'm just on a Zoom call. Can I call? Thank you very much. I won't be long. Thanks a lot. Okay, bye.
Better get on with the interview, John, because otherwise you will be very long.
Absolutely, yeah, let's crack on.
John Illsley, it's terrific to meet you. Welcome to A Breath of Fresh Air. Wow, what a career you've enjoyed so far. You're going to have to walk me through it, but let's start at the most recent things and work our way back. You've got a book out, you've got a new album out, a solo album, which is your 8th solo album. Could you tell us a little bit about both of those?
Well, they were projects which were really not planned, to be honest. But then we had lockdown. And for people who do music and do a bit of writing and stuff, it was the ideal time to indulge, if you like, because there wasn't anything else going on. I mean, literally, everything just came to, probably in Australia, everything came to a standstill.
Yeah, it was
the phone didn't ring, nobody was doing anything. And I had a few ideas for some songs, so I started with that. And but before the lockdown started, actually, let me just go back a little bit. A publisher approached me about writing a book about the Straits, or my life in the Straits, actually, because she'd been to see one of the shows that I was doing, which was sort of a Q&A of the band's life, which I started doing about 2 or 3 years ago because it was very enjoyable to reflect with one of my managers and have a chat and then play some music, have a chat, play some music. And so it was a sort of an evening of, if you like, personal indulgence, but also sort of a Q&A with the audience as well. So she saw that and she wrote to me, well, and she didn't write to me. I found I don't know what it was. We were sitting next to each other at a charity gig and at some lunch somewhere. And she said, have you ever thought about writing a book? And I said, it's a very odd question. Why are you asking me? She said, well, I'm an agent and I came to see your show the other day. So she put the idea forward of a book, which I hadn't really been thinking about at all, to be honest, until she mentioned it. And I said, I'm not sure that I could do that. So I said, I'm probably going to have some help to arrange it. And because when you're writing a book, it needs to be structured. And having never written one before, it would have been crazy to try and do it on my own. And so anyway, one thing led to another. And we actually started putting the idea together before lockdown. And then, of course, with lockdown, we were doing what we're doing now, which was Zooming every day. And I was relating the story. And I thought I wasn't going to remember anything at all. But then, interestingly enough, once you start talking about something else comes into your mind. And it was remarkable because I can't remember an awful lot of things. And suddenly, but I was remembering the almost ridiculous details. So
you surprised yourself.
And it just turned into this, quite long process. And then the album took place during lockdown. And I started the album. Sorry, I'm waffling on a bit here, but
no, not at all.
I started the album with my son Harry, who brought all his DJ equipment and recording equipment down before lockdown started. So we set it up in my studio, and I said, let's go and work on some songs together for about 2 or 3 hours a day in the morning. We sat down, and he'd never done anything like this before, and I'd never done anything with him before. So it was quite an interesting sort of father-son moment.
I can imagine.
I think he found it quite tricky to begin with. His dad's sitting here strumming a guitar and recording it, whereas he does DJ music and mixes things and all the rest of it. Anyway, the bare bones of that then turned into a full-blown album. And of course, 8 is my 8th solo album. There we are. That's where we are. So I ended up after lockdown with 2 fairly big projects on my hands.
Amazing. Why did you call the album 8?
Well, it's my 8th solo album. And actually, when I was looking at photographs for the book, my sister, who's got the archive of the family, she gave me all these pictures of when we were young. And one of them was when I was 8 years old, which is the cover. If you get the album, you'll see it. There's a cover of me on the front when I was 8, just before we were going to have, I think we were going to have lunch with Granny somewhere. So I had a tie on and, all sort of like this, me at 8 years old. And I thought, this is my 8th solo album. That's me when I was 8. Let's call it 8. So that was that. And it's also, when you call something 8, everybody says, what does that mean? And I said, well, because there's been 7 solo albums before that. And they go, oh my God, we never knew that.
No, I didn't know that either.
So yeah, that helps people to go back and listen to the early music. Well, hopefully anyway.
Yeah. So 8 has 9 tracks on it, and they're all original tracks. Which one? Do you have a personal favorite?
Well, a long way back, the opening track on the album is really a reflection of when the band started in this little council flat in Deptford, and it was really based around the first time we went to Los Angeles as a group in 1979, the first American tour, and we played at the Roxy in LA. And it was all about going there and staying at the Sunset Marquis, which was the rock and roll hotel and where all the misbehaving went on in LA. There's plenty of that.
I remember it well.
And you've been there?
I have.
Yeah. So the Roxy was just down the strip from there, and And we didn't realize at the time until we went up to the bar upstairs that there were quite a lot of people in the room which were, you know, fairly important sort of celebrity types. And one was Bob Dylan was there, and Rod Stewart was there, and Britt Eklund turned up on the next night because they'd obviously just separated. So that was a bit, and Stevie Nicks. And so it was a bit of the sort of LA crowd really turned up, and it's all very exciting. So I wrote this song called Long Way Back, because it's a long way back to Deptford Town, which is where the band started. It was a pretty seedy part of London in a council flat, which I was renting.
Yeah.
So that to me is the sort of symbolizes the album, really, that reflection. And so that coincided with also looking back when I was writing the book. So it all kind of melds together in some weird sort of way.
You really did start from very humble beginnings, didn't you? Could you tell us a little bit about how you got together with your friend Mark Knopfler?
Well, this is a sort of series of coincidences, actually. And I think life is a series of coincidences. If you put yourself in a particular place where something different might happen, then occasionally different things do happen. And so I've never really taken the straight and narrow. Probably a bit more straight and narrow now, although my wife probably doesn't think so. Than I was then. I used to take quite a few risks. You know, I didn't go to university until I was 23, and so I sort of, if I felt like changing and doing something, I usually take the unpredictable path, and which found me in this council flat which I was renting in South London, and I needed a flatmate. And a friend of mine said, well, I know a local social worker who's looking for a place to live. And it turned out to be David Knopfler.
Mark's brother.
Which is kind of was an important moment, which we didn't realize, of course, in all our lives. The fact that I had a space in this council flat, because I couldn't afford the rent because it was £9.48 a week. And I really was, I wasn't very well off at the time. I was going to say I was in dire straits, but that's such a cliche now. But things were pretty basic. So David moved in and he had a guitar with him, and so we used to sit down and strum guitar a bit. And I think one day he said to me, "Oh, you should meet my brother Mark. He's quite handy on the guitar." And I said, "Oh, great." He said he's probably going to come down in a couple of weeks, and he did. He came down, and I met him, and you know, when you meet somebody for the first time, you get a sort of I just got a certain sense of warmth from him, and I thought at the time when I was reflecting on it, I thought I'm going to know this bloke for a long time, you know. And as it turned out, it's been, God knows, 45 years now. So
quite incredible, maybe really, more, isn't it?
46 years, I can't remember now.
Has it gone as fast for you as it has for me?
Well, there's one thing that we don't realize, of course, is that we don't have unlimited amount of time on this planet. So it's best to get on with stuff. And I think you realize that as you get older. You know, there's only a limited amount of birthdays you're going to have. And, you know, when you're 23, you don't think about birthdays and how many more you're going to have.
No, of course not.
When you're 73, you think, okay, I've had quite a few birthdays.
Yeah.
I don't dwell on it too much, but so that was the sort of, that's what I'm saying, the coincidences. And I wouldn't have been in the council flat unless I'd packed in my job and gone to study sociology and philosophy at Goldsmiths College. And they were giving out council flats to students. So I got one of those. So I almost created this thing for myself without realizing it, where I was going to meet these guys. And we just made sense musically together and personally together. You know, we just used to hang out a lot, Mark and I especially, and still do. I mean, so, you know, who knows what's going to happen in life? I don't know.
Yeah. Do you believe in fate?
Do I believe in fate?
Mm.
Probably, yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, whatever fate is,
Yeah.
it's a very difficult word to describe. You just know what it means, but what is it? I mean,
Yeah, well, it's certainly intangible, isn't it? So when you
yeah.
when you decided to pull a band together with them, who actually named it Dire Straits and why?
Well, that was named by a friend of Pick Withers, the drummer, who who was the only professional musician amongst us, and he was living with other musicians in North London, and he was so blooming poor. He said, "I'm not going to come and play with the band unless you pay my petrol and my fag money." And we didn't have any money ourselves, so that was a bit. I thought that was a bit tight. But anyway, he was a great drummer, and we enjoyed playing with him. Um, so we paid his fag money and his petrol for him to come down and play with us. And his mate, you know, when we were looking for a name for the band, his mate said to him, "Pick, you've been a professional drummer all your life, and you're still in Dire Straits. Why don't you call it that?" So that's how it, you know, how it came to be. I mean, I suppose the Rolling Stones called themselves the Rolling Stones because, you know, of a blues song by Muddy Waters. I don't know. I mean, the Beatles is a great name because it's B-E-A-T as opposed to B-E-E-T.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Uh, these are little gems. Why
yeah.
they, how the Kinks got their name, I don't know. That's probably a different story altogether. But
I'll have to ask them that. So, John Illsley, you started gigging around the place. In the beginning, it wasn't easy for you. You didn't have any money. You were carrying all your own gear in and out of gigs. When did fortune change for you?
well, there's another coincidence. You see, I stupidly started a record shop in North London with a girlfriend of mine when I was at university, and in order to sort of get the right music in the place, I sent a letter to a DJ in London who I'd been listening to. He used to play on Sunday mornings, a guy called Charlie Gillett, and he had this honky tonk music show, and it was basically American music, you know, blues music, country, a mixture of country and blues, rock and roll, a new music as well. He used to play new bands, and I got some ideas for the shop from him. He very graciously sent me a whole list of albums that I should stock in the record store. So I called the record store Honky Tonk Records after his show, which was honky tonk music. And he had a record company called Honky Tonk Records and all the rest of it. So
Oh,
anyway, he was quite happy for us to use that title. Anyway, the shop lasted about 4 months. And so that was a bit of a disaster. But I had a contact with Charlie. And so when we made the demo tape in 1976 or whatever it was, when Mark had about about four songs at the five, maybe five songs at the time, um, I said, well, like, you know, Mark said to me, "Don't you know Charlie Gillett?" And on Radio London, I said, "I don't exactly know him, but I'm sure we can get in contact with him." So I wrote to Charlie and said, "Look, I'm in this band called Dire Straits, and we've made this demo tape. Would you listen to it?" And he wrote back and he said, "Sure." And he said, "Come round to the house for tea on Thursday afternoon." So Mark and I trooped down there with this tape, gave it to Charlie, and not thinking anything of it. And that was Thursday. And that Sunday morning, he played Sultans of Swing on the radio from the demo tape. And we didn't hear it because we for that morning we weren't listening to the show. Mark and I were shifting some furniture to make some money for a mate, and so we didn't hear it on the radio until the following weekend when he played it again, and he said, "I'm going to play this song on the radio until somebody out there picks this band up and gives them a record deal." And it was like, so I rang Charlie up and said, "God, blimey, Charlie, what's going on here?" And he said, "You wouldn't believe the amount of phone calls I've had from record companies, other DJs, music people saying, 'Who the hell is this band? What the hell's going on, Charlie?'" And he said, "Well, I don't know anything about them apart from that these two blokes came in and gave me this tape." anyway, he said, "Can I give your phone number away to them?" And I said, "Sure." And then our phone started ringing like crazy. We didn't have. There's no mobiles in those days. It was an old phone on the wall, you know.
Of course. Of
So
course.
every time somebody rang up from a record company, I was writing all their details all over the walls in this council flat. So the whole wall was covered in people's names and telephone numbers.
Were you
And
shocked?
yeah, well, pleasantly surprised, I think, would probably be the right expression. And so we were suddenly bombarded with 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 these record companies coming at us. And
John, John, did you know?
Just
did
one
you,
second.
Yeah, sure.
I don't think that. Right. Sorry, I plugged
that's okay.
Here's my technical thing again. I plugged the computer, but didn't turn the bloody plug on. Sorry.
John, that's all right. It gets edited anyway. John, did you know that you had something special with the other guys? I mean, you obviously knew how prolific a songwriter and a great guitarist Mark was. Well, Mark is. Did you know that you were making really special music together at that point?
Well, it felt good. That's all I can say. I mean, you don't really know until somebody says we like that. It's a bit like I mean, I paint pictures, and I'm painting away and I think that's okay, you know, all the rest of it, or that seems to work. But it doesn't really, unless you're communicating something to somebody else and they say that's good. So it's the feedback you kind of get, which makes you think, oh, people are taking this seriously. They kind of like it.
Well, they certainly liked it.
I don't think anybody really knows when they first start out. And so there's an element of surprise. You know, I think when the Stones started out, you know, they were just playing rock and roll and blues and stuff like that. They didn't know what was going to happen. And suddenly there was mayhem surrounding them. And in a sense, there was a bit of mayhem surrounding us, I suppose, not in the same kind of way. We were probably not quite so misbehaving as the Stones,
but you were huge. Yeah, I mean, at the time you were the biggest.
Know.
At the time, you were the biggest band in the world, and the journey lasted you something like 15 years, right?
Yeah, it did. It had legs, as we say, and
it sure did.
I think the reason why was because you mentioned it earlier. You know, we had a pretty prolific songwriter who, you know, was constantly coming up with ideas and good songs. And I mean, songs like Romeo and Juliet and Tunnel of Love and Telegraph Road and Money for Nothing. I mean, these are sort of, without one realizing it, these have formed the sort of backdrop of quite a few people's lives, and which is actually a very pleasurable thing to know. And having been a part of that was a great pleasure for me, I have to say. And I think the important thing to remember, though, is, I mean, Mark's often said this to me. He said, I do wonder what would have happened if you and the other guys we made these songs with, it would have sounded the same if these songs had been played by somebody else. And I said, well, we'll never know that. I said, but you know, and the great thing about the writing was that we all kind of got involved when the song was you know, presented to the band. The band then knocked it into shape, for want of a better expression, and so everybody's input. And I think the rhythm section between myself and Pick was pretty important in that. The feel of the rhythm section is pretty important. That seems to have stood the test of time as well. I mean, I still play exactly the same now, and I suppose Pick does, but I haven't played with him for a few years.
Be nice to see you guys come back together.
To play. It's very important to say this. Everybody has a part to play in a band situation. It's very important to make that point.
And the chemistry between you is also super important, isn't it? The fact that you all got on so well together, and you and Mark in particular, would have contributed to the sounds you were making.
Yeah, I think the bands survive because of exactly what you've said. You know, that it is about having a relationship with somebody and the relationship working over time. You know, some relationships are only momentary, some, and this one seems to have stood the test of time. We knew when to call it a day, though. I mean, I think we realized that after the On Every Street album and the On Every Street tour, where we played to 7 million people or something. I was thinking about it the other day, because actually, I'll tell you why. This is interesting. It's a documentary on at the moment, which you should get hold of it. It's really to celebrate the Stones' 60 years.
Oh, I read about that in The Guardian. Yeah.
And they worked it out. They played to 21 million people in their life, right? And I thought, oh my God, that's a hell of a lot. And I thought, how many people of the Straits played to? And I thought, well, that's 5, that's 7, that's 8. So we played to about 10 million people.
That's amazing.
Which is a really extraordinary thought. It's completely wacky when you think about it, that 10 million people have actually seen the band play live.
And how many other people's lives have you affected that didn't have the opportunity to see you live?
Yeah.
Any more millions in that?
Well, it's interesting because a lot of people have very long memories, probably better than mine. And when I go out and play now, people turn up at the gigs with their ticket stub from 1979. And it's like, oh my God, that's been in some dusty drawer somewhere.
John Illsley, have you always had your feet on the ground through this journey, or did you get carried away with it at the height of the success? Because you appear to be such a grounded, humble, normal sort of a guy. Did you become the pop star when everybody was clamoring for you?
Well, I think that that side of things is very difficult to deal with sometimes, and I think it helped the fact that we were a bit older, and you know, look, I can assure you we had an awful lot of fun. Let's put it that way, playing music and you know, being together and hanging out together, and so. I think it's probably because I came from a family which was quite disciplined. My father was an ex-major in the army and a bank manager. And so I came from a sort of slightly disciplined family. And I think that probably stood me in good stead when the band first started, because I was able to literally sort of hold things together while everybody else was sort of like, you know,
out of control,
not doing anything.
Yeah,
and so actually quite an important partnership there, between, you know, when you realize that what you're good at, and I knew what I was good at.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. And I can assure you, not in a boring way either. I mean, I've had plenty of fun, let me assure you.
Yeah, I can see that on your face. That's okay. You wouldn't be boring. Do you have, of all of those fabulous songs, is there one that's closest to your heart?
Well, it's a song that really is sort of seems to have resonance, and I think will have resonance for probably an awful long time. Is Brothers in Arms. It's one of those songs which touches people and me every time I play it. I think it's a wonderful piece of music. I played it recently at a festival in Ireland, a literary festival, after some discussions and some talks about the war in Ukraine and all the rest of it. And the organizers said, would you just play Brothers in Arms acoustically? So I did, and it was quite difficult, because it's quite difficult to play just on the guitar on your own. And
you did it.
I did it, and I found it quite difficult myself, because I was, you know, very much aware of the impact that this situation in Ukraine is having on the world and the new world order and all the rest of it. And to then play this song at the end of it all was quite harrowing. And but it was a remarkable experience, and probably one I'll treasure, actually.
That's so nice. So nice. The book is called
My Life in Dire Straits. I'll help you out.
The book is called, thank you. The book is called My Life in Dire Straits. It's out now. The album is called 8. That's very easy to remember. What do your kids think about you? Are they proud of their dad, or are they like most kids that are growing up or have grown up that just shrug it off and go, think you're an old fogey?
Well, they kind of got used to it, I think. I think they are. Yes, I know they're proud. Actually, I'm proud of them. I mean, they've all turned out. I've got 4 of them. They're all turned out pretty good, and 3 of them are into music, and one is into buildings. So the one into buildings, of course, is earning a good living, and the other one's like into music or not.
Did you try and talk them out of it?
No, not at all. I mean, look, both my daughters have sung on pretty much, well, certainly 5 of my albums, and Harry helped me make this last one, and so they're all part of it. And my youngest daughter came out on the last tour and did all the organising and tour managing and stuff. So and she loves all that stuff, and she's there. I think they love the history of the family, if you like, and so I think they've half read the book, which is good, because actually it then gets into the sort of the big time stuff. But they've read the early part of the book, which is me growing up and how one gets into these crazy situations in your life. So it's an example to them, really, of not accepting the status quo, which I never did. I wasn't very good at that.
Yeah.
I'm probably better at it now, although sometimes my wife is not so sure. But yeah, I think they're proud, and in a sense that makes me feel good too, because and I'm still working, I'm still playing, I'm still writing, so that won't ever go away. And when somebody says, when are you going to retire? And I said, what from? I mean, it's just,
well, it's your passion, isn't it? And you've discovered a new talent in being a painter as well, because your art is fabulous.
Well, thank you. That's an ever-changing situation, the painting, that's for sure. That is really difficult.
Well, it's just a new challenge. I have total faith in you that you'll conquer that one too. John, Zoom's going to throw us off, so I better let you go. But right. in letting you go, which track would you like us to go out with from their latest album?
Oh, I think Long Way Back, I think.
I've done that one already. You've talked about that. Choose another one.
Oh, you've done that one already. Okay. Yeah. 21st Century, because I think it's pretty relevant to what's going on right now.
Okay, we'll give it a whirl. John Illsley, thank you so much for talking with us today. What an absolute pleasure to meet you, and congratulations on a fabulous, fabulous career.
Thank you very much. Nice to speak to you.
You too. All the very best. Bye now. Bye-bye.